We have Miss Roulette on, I see. Okay. Who am I?
Mayor Crane, you are live.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Just checking our Skype windows here. Okay. All right. It is, believe it or not, March, meaning February is gone. So, welcome to the March 1st, 2021 regular business meeting of the Town Council for the town of Turner Valley. We started today's meeting at 5 o'clock with an in-camera session to discuss 3 items. We recessed at, I believe, 6 o'clock, and we reconvene right now. So we will reconvene the meeting here at 6:31.
Need a motion to go into open session.
And we will take a motion to go into open session. And that's from Councillor Hamilton. All in favor? Excellent. And a motion arising from closed session, Councillor Holiday.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Peter McDowell to the Municipal Planning Commission for the town of Turner Valley.
Thank you. Any discussion on the appointment and the motion made? No. All in favor? Excellent. Thank you. We'll now continue on to the open portion of the meeting. 5.1, done. Motions arising, done. Adoption of previous minutes. 7.1, for the February 16th meeting. Can I get a motion to adopt those, please? Councillor Wilkie, Deputy Mayor Wilkie. Anyone have any comments on the minutes? Errors, omissions? All good? Seeing none? On my little Zoom screen, and all in favor? Excellent, thank you, that's carried. Question period. At the start of every business meeting, the town has a question period. This is a chance for the public to ask any questions of administration or council for clarity or just information purposes. During COVID, we can submit it through email, phone call, email to your councillors, any form. We'll take any form of communication as long as it's not smoke signal, because I can't tell if it's a dot dot or a puff, so we stick to Morse code as a very bare minimum. Have we received any questions, Ms. Thompson?
We have received none.
We have received no questions for question period, so we will move on. Thank you. 9 is statutory hearings. We have none. 10 is delegations. We have none. We had a great one last meeting from Peter Sutherland and Jason Spicer. That was great. 11, Chief Administrative Officer's report. Before we get to that, Council, I just want to remind that we are dealing, of course, with the Zoom windows. It's hard for me to see everybody at one given time, as I have to scroll the screens to see if your hand is up. So Councillor Hamilton is in chambers. She will be monitoring the screen as well. If you have a question, please keep your hand up until you see me indicate that I've seen you, or I will say I have in order Rab, Hamilton, Gordon. If you have a follow-up question, please wait to allow the person to answer the question, and then I will ask you, do you have a follow-up? Please don't just jump in and start talking, as I may have someone else in the queue or have indicated something else. So, follow-up questions, I will ask you, do you have a follow-up? That being said, let's go to our Chief Administrative Officer's report, 11.1. Ms. Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Crane. The first thing I'd like to report to Council is regarding the Sunset Boulevard sewer main update. Wanted to let Council know the request for proposal has been posted on the Alberta Purchasing Connection, ACP, which is an Alberta government website. Submissions will only be accepted electronically and will be received through MPE's bidding system. All of the bidders have had to go through the pre-qualification process, which we did previously. And these bids will close on March the 10th, 2021 at 2 o'clock Alberta time. So we're looking forward to seeing those coming in. That's it, Mayor Crane, for Sunset Boulevard. Are there any questions regarding the Sunset Boulevard project from council?
I have one. MP has the control of bids and they accept all bids. Do we have a staff member who attends and opens the bids with him?
Richard Beltran will be
Project manager.
Project manager through this process, and he's worked very closely with MP on developing the request for approval. And so yes, Richard Beltran will be in attendance.
Excellent.
I suspect Michelle may also be in attendance.
Okay, excellent. Just wanted to know that.
Yeah.
Councillor Hamilton.
I didn't go look at the bid, Heather. I probably would know the answer to the bid. I'm just wondering, what was the timeline? What was the construction start for this?
We're hoping to start April 1st, as close to April 1st as we can. And Mr. Beltran's reason for that is so that we can get a bulk of the work completed on the east end of Sunset Boulevard, so it doesn't inconvenience businesses as much as it could. So hopefully we'll get going with the pre-work as close to April 1st as possible.
And the construction time?
I can't answer that one,
Okay.
sorry.
That's okay, thanks.
Councillor Holiday.
Yeah, with construction hoping to get underway so quickly, have we started contacting businesses, letting them know, getting some communications out to the town that this is going to be happening fairly quickly so it doesn't surprise anyone?
Michelle, are you here?
Yes.
Michelle? It's my understanding, yes, businesses.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I was unmuting.
Oh, sorry. Can you respond to Councillor Holiday's question regarding contacting businesses, et cetera, for the Sunset?
Yeah,
project?
I can. Richard has been in contact with some of the business owners as we've developed the detour and parking plan. And come the 15th of March, we'll be doing a more formal communication through the website and a few other things on what to expect during the construction season.
And Michelle, could you actually respond to Councillor Hamilton's question? What is the time frame for the project?
I think, if memory serves me, it's expected to be done in the fall. Like once they get going, my understanding is it only takes a few months to complete. So we're looking at like a November timeline. Richard would know more specifically the exact dates for that timing, but it is planned for the fall and be done before Christmas. There's Richard.
Sorry, I missed the question.
When is the Sunset project going to be done?
Start to finish is kind of the question.
Okay, so the project should be substantially complete by September, with deficiencies and some maybe like landscaping, for example, completed the following year. But the bulk of the work will be done by September.
Okay. Does that include paving?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. I have a question. I'm just looking to see if any other councillor does first. My question would be in regards to the detours. Having Sandy McNabb and Blue Rock Campground to the west of us, and knowing that through COVID we have seen a massive influx of people to the West Mountain region, and camping is on the top of the priority list for many people as a staycation getaway. All that traffic will be routed through local neighborhoods. So I would like to know what we have thought about, and if we haven't thought about it, now's a great time. Increased signage at all intersections up the detour route to make sure that residents are aware and that people pulling trailers are aware that this is a child zone and so on for the safety of all, and that the 30 kilometer per hour through town is also the rule, not the 60 kilometers per hour that you pin it down Windsor Ave when you're coming downhill, which I've seen, and I'd like to throw rocks at them, but I can't because there's snow on the ground. So my question is, do we need some money for signage? Because I'd love to see more signs than not enough. So have we got signage planned for the detour route that is extremely clear and efficient?
We can prepare signage. The contractor is to submit a traffic accommodation plan to Alberta Transportation for approval by AT for the detour. In addition, we're going to be including signage for pedestrians to use we want to direct pedestrians to certain roads, to avoid certain roads. But there is room for adding more signage.
Okay, excellent. I'd rather flag it now and plan for that, because I think it's going to be a major concern. That's just my opinion, but time will tell. Okay, thank you. Council, any further questions regarding Sunset Boulevard's project? Screening, scanning, any? Seeing none? That's it for CAO report?
No. My second item that I'd like to bring to council's attention is upon administration completing research regarding the direction of council to begin the process of a road closure for the laneway directly north of 112 Main Street Northwest, when planning began to move forward with the road closure, it was discovered this lane was closed by bylaw 79-364, closure of lane, on November the 20th, 1979. So that's pretty good news. Therefore, no further action is required to close the road. Now, the planning staff, Michelle and Judy, and I have to give kudos to Judy here. She did some digging, and along with the surveyor, they got this information. It's a very old bylaw, and I wasn't aware of it. So anyway, planning staff are now developing the move forward plan, which may include engaging an appraiser, engagement of potential purchasers, and speaking with municipal legal counsel to ensure there are no red flags. This process will take some time. However, as the process to close the lane is complete, the timelines have been somewhat reduced. So if there's any questions regarding that and the plan forward, Michelle is here attending to perhaps respond to those questions. I'll turn it over to Mayor Crane and to council.
Thank you. Councillor Gordon.
Yeah, thanks for the work administration done on this. And one quick question I have is that piece of land still belongs to the town then? There was no sale or inclusion of that property in the previous or in the current landowner?
Mr. Lett?
Yes, yeah, the town still owns the land. It was closed by bylaw and it has been just there on the books since then. We've just been leasing it to the one owner to the north, but it is town land, yes.
Oh, Councillor Rapp.
Thanks. That's great news about that bylaw that had already closed that back alley. Could you sell the whole parcel to one owner, left or right, like north or south? As opposed to splitting it down the middle, you could sell the whole lane to one owner, right?
Councillor Rob, yes, we can. There's no real process for that in terms of a public tender or anything that I was originally thinking. So I'm going to work with our legal counsel to make sure that we dispose of the land accordance to the MGA.
Excellent. Thank you. Follow-up, Councillor Gordon?
No, I'm good. It's just understanding the process is that this moves the timeline a little bit closer to what the developers were hoping for. And I just appreciate the work that's been done already.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Excellent. Seeing no other comments, That is really good news, I must say. I love to see a few of these pigs fall into the line. This is just one of those that really helped out. So, good luck moving ahead with the process, Mr. Lett, and glad to hear that we have one less peg to deal with. So, there you go. Okay, Ms. Thompson, back to you.
If my report would be accepted.
You betcha. Can I get a motion? Councillor Gordon gives me a motion to accept for information the CAO report 11.1 as presented. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. I did notice, Councillor Hall, that your hand went up. Was that just to make the motion, or did you have a comment? Just to make the motion? All right, sounds good. Administrative responses, 12.1, Councillor Wilkie, Deputy Mayor Wilkie. Response to the February 16, 2021 question regarding the Calgary Metropolitan Growth Board. I don't have it on my paper, so I'm going to go over to Ms. Thompson, or I'll ask Deputy Mayor Wilkie to speak to the response as you did pose the question. Does it answer all the questions that you had?
For the most part, yes. One question, I guess, for clarification. It did say that the CMRB does have jurisdiction over quote unquote regionally significant statutory plans brought before the board through the REF to ensure alignment with the growth plan. The main thing I was trying to find out here is, if we were to choose to annex land and decide that we need room for growth, if that were the case, would that get wrapped into that statutory plan definition within the CMRB? I.e., would they end up having to approve us annexing land from foothills?
Thank you. Ms. Ouellette.
Councillor Wilkie, I'll try and answer this. The REF is not developed 100% yet. It's one of those implementation items that comes out of the growth plan once the growth plan has been adopted by that the CMRB, the board. Right now, Turner Valley and Black Diamond are not members of the board because we don't have the population en masse to do so. However, the Foothills County is. So if we wanted to do some annexation, I understand we can. We can proceed, within the intermunicipal planning frameworks in place. When they refer to statutory plans, things like a new area structure plan or a new neighborhood structure plan that propose densities, for example. If through the CMRB policies, we have minimum densities for suburban developments, for example, you take your ASP, it would go through first and second reading at council in Turner Valley, Black Diamond, or whatever that municipality looks like in the future, if we are a member with our new annexed land, or whatever, sort of ends up being in 10 years or 5 years, we take that to the board for them to give it a blessing based on the REF process, which is going to reflect, it allows the board to look at the area structure plan against the future CMRB policies once they're in place.
Excellent. Thank you. Follow up, Councillor Wilkie?
Yeah, just one clarifying plan. So our ASPs and those kind of structure plans would only be subject to review at CMRB if we were a member of CMRB then, correct? Like if we were to approve a new ASP for a new development today, that would not be subject to the growth plan review.
That is correct. That is correct, Councillor Wilkie. Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate it.
That's a good follow-up and good to know. All right. Thank you. With that being said, Deputy Mayor Wilkie, I'll get a motion from you to accept for information. And I get the head nod there. All in favor? And that's carried. 13, administrative inquiries. We have none.
Correct, Mayor Crane.
No latecomers even. All righty. 14, bylaws and policies. We have none. 15 is old business. We have 15.1, the gas plant walkway update on stage construction and council decision to enter into an agreement with the ministry. I'm sure Councillor Gordon will be more than happy to listen to this and comment. All right, are we going to Mr. Lett or to you, Ms.
Richard Beltran developed the RFD.
Excellent.
So I will leave it to Richard.
We will go to Richard.
Go through the RFD if there's any questions.
Mr. Beltran, the floor is yours.
So I contacted the province and asked them if the question we were to ask them is if they would agree with phasing the project, and they were positive to that. They said that they don't mind phasing, but the most important thing to them is that the public safety is the most important thing, and so based on that, we would recommend to proceed with engaging the ministry to prepare an agreement which will identify our roles and responsibilities between the town and the province.
Excellent. Thank you. Roll here. Councillor Gordon.
Yeah, thanks for following up. I know there's several of us on council who really want to move forward with this strategic priority to have the river access and really to make our riverfront really, really attractive to people coming in. One question I have, Richard, regarding the safety that the ministry is concerned about, I would say the berm and walkway that was done in High River is quite a bit higher. The water's quite a bit deeper there on the Highwood than what we would have here. What were some of the concerns that the ministry had regarding the safety of the public? Have they relayed that to you, or are we just too early in the ballgame to know that for sure?
In our pre-design, we identified through discussion with the province, they identified they didn't want any smoking on the property, and that they wanted to identify that there was no river access. And we prepared signage as an example of what we would propose, and they were in agreement with that as part of the letter that we had sent to them.
Yep, follow up, Councillor Gordon.
Yeah, just a simple follow up. I'd like to, I'm not so concerned about the no river access from that land surrounding the gas plant. I think a little bit west of that, there's river access, and then even east of that, on our currently town-owned land, we have river access. So that's not a major concern, but obviously it'd be nice to see and really be working together with the ministry, alongside Richard, to make sure that they're fully aware that this is a council-driven project, and that it really is part of the initiative with Tourism Alberta, bringing people out of Calgary, tourists out of Calgary to come here. So I just want to make sure that we're on top of that as a council and doing our part and what we can to, if we need to lobby the minister, let's do it.
So I'm going to say that you're probably wanting to put that into a motion to direct administration to align an agreement with the ministry. You can read it off, but I'll go to Heather here for a second. Go ahead, Ms. Thompson.
Richard, and also the ministry did advise that they would likely put up interpretive signs down the road as well, did they not?
They did. They said that part of the phasing that they would consider as a cost savings is to have the town install the interpretive signs at a later date. Their understanding is that those signs could be very expensive.
Great, thank you. Also, I'd like to say I don't think there needs to be an addition to the recommendation. Richard is well aware of council's direction and would work through the agreement with the ministry.
As is.
As is.
So we're good. Okay, excellent. We're good. That direction's already been set, Councillor Gordon. This is the extension and follow-up, so we'll let them continue on the path that we set a while ago. Excellent. Well, that's really great news. Much needed river access / no river access. But you know what? If you're close enough to smell the water, you're good. No, we've got other nicer spots that we can go, but just being able to loop it will be fantastic for the community and for the Friendship Trail. Moving on.
Mayor Crane?
Yes, ma'am.
We do have a motion that's required from the RFD.
I can't read it because I got the hard copy.
Option
Option
one,
one.
and Councillor Gordon, I believe, made the motion. We just need to call for a vote.
Okay, Councillor Gordon, do you want to read the option one motion?
Sure, we'll take option one, that council direct administration to engage the ministry to begin the process of preparing an agreement. I guess regarding the walkway around the gas plant.
Staged construction. All right. Any further comments? Seeing none, all in favor? There you go. You'll have to forgive me, guys. I have no recommendations on my hard copy here, so it's hard to know. Anyway. Oh, they're all over there. Now imagine that, eh? Surplus land, 15.2. We have request to amend sale process. All right, Ms. Hulette. So we'll swing over here. Oh, we're going to go Ms. Thompson first, and then we're going to go to Ms. Hulette. Okay.
So this is regarding the sale of the surplus land, a request to amend the sale process. I'd also like to welcome John Fraser, who is here to assist Michelle if any questions come forward regarding this, and I will now turn this over to Ms. Olette.
Thank you. Michelle?
Thank you, Mayor Crane and CAO Thompson. I mentioned this the last time we had our council meeting, and we were talking about, basically land development items. We have the land, the surplus land that's going to market, and the report and the motion from council back December 2019 was for administration to sell the land through a real estate process, which is typically just listing the land, hanging the signage and receiving, offers. So I put out the RFP for providing that service to some qualified real estate agents in the area. And John Fraser was one of the responders for the RFP. And we talked about, his experience in doing it through a tender or quotation process, which has some benefits where, you have all the offers on the table at once to consider. You're not taking one offer and then, working that through, and then someone else comes, it has some benefits. So I've outlined those in the RFD report as well. There's some other benefits we talked about last council meeting, where could we set some targets for development timing, and some expectations around the land use and how the future owner would go to council with a rezoning and put some criteria to this. Obviously, something like the timing of the development can also be done through the sales agreement itself. But this way, we set up the request for quotation such that it's very transparent to the bidder what the expectations are. So we've decided to go with John to work with us through this process. And he's here if there's any questions in addition to what's in the report.
All right. Thank you very much. Council. Councillor Deputy Mayor Wilkie, you have the floor.
Thanks, Michelle. I like this approach. I guess the concern here is if you're in a particularly soft market and you just happen to miss people, that you end up not getting the bids that you want, but I assume that's all managed through reserve bid process. So that's great. The one question that I had, and this is, I guess, more for Michelle or maybe even for Heather, what would actually happen with the funds that we receive from any land sale under this? Where do those end up? are they automatically put into a particular reserve, or how is that handled?
Ms. Thompson?
Yes, they're automatically put into the land reserve, which I can't tell you exactly the amount that's sitting in there now, but that is where our proceeds from the water treatment plant process to Shrek from the partners. That's where those funds are sitting, and previously the other two lot sales that we did, those proceeds are sitting in that capital reserve as well.
Follow up, Councillor Wilkie, and then I have Councillor Gordon.
Yeah, just a quick follow up on that. Those funds could be reallocated to other capital reserves. We just have talked previously about the potential for allocating these types of funds to, PRAC initiatives and okay, yeah, so we can reallocate. Okay, thank you, Heather.
Okay. I'll go Councillor. I'll go Ms. Thompson to respond, and then to Councillor Waring. So
as you are aware, Councillor Wilkie, we're updating the reserve policy, and I believe that we're going to clean it up even further, other than the Parks and Recreation Reserve. So you'll see that coming to, I believe, the Finance Committee meeting in April, or in March, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Waring, you have.
Yeah, I guess you've already said the answer, but it was discussed at the last meeting that these funds should be allocated into Parks and Rec projects. And I thought that was like a gimme. So if that's not the case, maybe we need to pass a motion that is a gimme.
No, not a gimme, but it's not a gimme, but we're developing the policy to include Parks and Rec, which would have come out of that reserve or a reserve into the newly formed Parks and Recreation Reserve. So the funds that were budgeted for that last year and those funds that are budgeted for this year will be transferred from one reserve to the other, creating that reserve.
Okay.
If I follow up, if I may. So
yes,
what we're saying is that this would not be in addition to the funds that have already been allocated to park projects, which is what my understanding was at the last meeting.
Was not my understanding. My understanding was the 100,000 from last year, because the projects were canceled under Parks and Rec, would be transferred. So that's basically reserve funds were going to be used for that. But by developing this new Parks and Recreation Reserve, the 100,000 from last year that was left unused will transfer into that, plus the 100,000 from this year.
Okay.
Okay. I think Councillor Waring will probably have a more in-depth discussion on where the reserves are going to be built up for Parks and Rec in the future, for sure. Why don't we go to Councillor Holiday, then I have Councillor Hamilton, and then I have a question for Mr. John Fraser after that. So Cindy, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I think we need to have more discussion definitely on the Parks and Rec funding and reserves, because we did leave it up in the air last meeting for sure. So I can understand why there's some confusion. As far as the administration recommendation, I'm happy, I think, to go with this way. Initially, I wondered about maybe that small lot, whether that should go on MLS or not. But the more I think about it, I think the most important thing for me is to get somebody that's willing to build on it soon, because really we're looking for the property tax revenue of built structures on those lots, happening sooner rather than later. So I'm okay with this approach with option one. So.
Excellent. Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
I think I'm good. My comment had to do with the transfer, and I think we're talking about two different things. I think that the funds going into a reserve is one conversation, but then the funds available to PPRAC is another conversation. Like, I don't just think every dollar from sales of proceeds PERC should have free reign over how that money is spent. If if we want to allocate it to council-approved initiatives within CPRAC, then maybe that's one thing. But my understanding of our conversation from last week was what Ms. Thompson has just reiterated.
We'll bulk up the 200,000 and then
Yes.
the rest is optional.
Yes, and for it to be allocated to parks projects, that's fine, but I think then you need to go through another approval process for projects and things like that.
Okay, excellent. I got Councillor Rabb, then I have Deputy Mayor Wilkie.
Yeah, I'm getting back to this parks or this PRAC money. I didn't know we had agreed that $100,000 that we hadn't spent last year would automatically go into the kitty this year, plus an additional 100. I don't believe we made that decision. At least I didn't think I was part of that. There was discussion about it, but I don't know if it ever raised a motion, because I don't recall voting in favor of that personally. As far as in the future, if, I mean, I'm fine with having it go to this tender process. I think that makes sense to me, and we can use it in the future for parks. That also makes sense to me. But I didn't know about the 100,000 last year. That was canceled, so it was canceled. End of story.
But this wasn't allocated over. Ms. Thompson, clarify, please.
So I think I agree with Councillor Hamilton. That's a different conversation, and we have to look at the policy before we make any of those decisions. The policy is coming forward to the Finance Committee, and then it will go up to Council with recommendations flowing from that. So what we have on the table right now is option one, and or whether Council so desires to move forward with the tender process versus MLS process.
I've got Deputy Mayor Wilkie, then I've got Councillor Waring, then I've got Councillor Hamilton. So we'll go Wilkie.
So first of all, I'm happy to make motion number one, motion option two, the administration recommendation that we direct to use the tender quotation method, and not to be a broken record, but we did not cancel projects; we deferred them for consideration in this year's budget. Which is a conversation that needs to be had when we allocate reserves, and that conversation is coming. So we don't even have a PRAC reserve yet, so let's cross that bridge when we get there.
There you go. Excellent. Waring, you want a quick jab at that one?
Yeah, I was going to make the motion, but as usual, Mr. Wilkie beat me to it.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, and Councillor Hamilton.
I just had one question for John Fraser. I was just wondering, for clarity, I know this came up last time, but how does, on a bid or tender process, how does reserve get set or decided to ensure that we do get value for the lots that we're selling?
I'm sorry, but that microphone is not very loud, and I had trouble hearing that question. Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay?
I'll talk louder. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, just crank that volume up a bit and we'll be good.
Okay, I'll come over to the speaker 1 second. Can you hear me better now?
Oh, you bet.
Okay, I just had a question regarding reserve pricing on the lots. How are reserves set, or are they set to ensure that we get value because we're not going to be listing them at a purchase price?
I'm not quite sure what you're meaning, but they will be listed on MLS. I came up with this idea actually quite a while ago when I was selling some land for the town of Okotoks. It was their old shop, and there seemed to be quite a bit of interest at that time. But the concern was that the process where if an offer came in, I would take it to the administrator. We would sit down, go through the offer, decide whether there needed to be any counter offers or any clarification, but then take that forward as a recommendation to council. The problem was that might have been, oh, sorry, I got some stupid thing on my screen. the problem was that was several weeks down the road. In the meantime, somebody else comes in with an offer. Okay, so we got to start that process all over again. Plus, we got to get back to the first people and say, now you are competing, and we have to now give you an equal opportunity to resubmit your offer. And you can imagine where that goes. And it's going to be complicated. The other assumption that I've always made is when you're dealing with public lands, you have to be extremely careful. You not only have to be fair, but you have to be seen to be fair. And I think you have to go out of your way so that no one feels that they've been not treated exactly the same as everyone else. And so I cleared that with the Calgary Real Estate Board. I used to be president years ago, but that was many years ago, and made sure that they were okay with that. And you probably have seen some listings of late where they are put out there, they're on MLS, but they're being sold by auction. Same kind of deal. So somebody could say, well, I got an offer for you right now. Sorry, can't deal with it. And here are the rules. And those rules have to be crystal clear, because I guarantee you that somebody will try to break those rules. What we're trying to do at the same time is to create a situation where there might be more than one offer. I mean, this is a tougher market right now, but it's a different kind of a market. In Turner Valley and Black Diamond, we're seeing multiple offers on houses that we never saw before and didn't expect them now. 1.5% interest rates has something to do with it, but so does the ability to work from home and not have to commute. To be able to sell your home in Calgary and move to Black Diamond or Turner Valley, have a bigger house on a bigger lot, and put $100,000 in the bank. That is happening. We're seeing multiple offers. In the middle of COVID, we're seeing multiple offers on properties in Turner Valley. I've been in the business a long time, and I thought I'd seen everything, but I haven't seen that. So the part of the intent here is to try to create some more interest by having a deadline, but having enough time for everyone to analyze it properly, I should say, and to make everyone feel that they've been treated fairly. I know when I did that with JRC Ranch in Okotoks, I had a fellow phone me the first week out of the shoots, and he said, I got an offer for you and I want you to present it. I said, I'm sorry, I can't. He said, what do you mean you can't? I said, well, you've seen what I put out there in terms of what are the rules, and I can't go against them. Well, then I'm taking my offer off the table. Fine. He tried to bully me into presenting his offer against all the rules that we had laid out. At the end of the day, we had 6 offers. So I'm absolutely convinced. I sold the town shop that way. I sold the RCMP station just over yonder here the same way. We ended up with multiple offers. And the one thing you can be sure of with multiple offers, if you get 3 offers, there are going to be 4 people that are unhappy. The 2 people that didn't get it, the person that got it thinks they paid too much, and the owner thinks they weren't asking enough. You're just not going to have everybody happy. But I think as a public organization, you really want to go out of your way to keep any complaints down to a minimum, because you can see them coming a mile away. You really can. I know all of you realize that. So that, based on my experience, is the best way to handle it. The MLS people are fine with it. I think it's probably the best way to come out of there with top dollar. These are not simple properties. One is basically just a duplication of everything else on that block, but the other 2 have the potential for complication. I gave you my idea about what it could become, because both of those are what about they could become, not what they are, but what could they become. And some of that, you've also got to be careful, in my opinion. You've got neighbors, and you've got to be careful in terms of what is proposed, I think, for those properties, because you don't want to start an uproar. You want this to be a positive experience for everybody and a good thing for the town. And I think it can be. If I could make just one last comment, though, decades ago, I used to be recreation director in Okotoks, and at that time, they were not doing much with their reserve lands, and I helped them create their whole policy around reserves, dealing with developers and so on. But what I learned in the process was through the transfer regulations and the Municipal Government Act, if you take lands for MR and you sell those lands, the money can only be used for the same purposes for which the land itself could have been used. Now, that may have changed in the last number of years, but I suspect it hasn't. I sold a number of them for Foothills, and the reason they sold some of those reserve parcels was to put money into the Red Deer Lake School. So I just caution you, as far as I was aware, parks, recreation, and schools are the only three purposes for MR. And if you decide to sell it, those are the only three purposes for which that money can be used. And I stand to be corrected if I'm out of date, but that was always my understanding. So I just caution you on that one to take a look at it. But I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Excellent. Thank you. No, that was actually very,
Great.
a very good answer, and shed some light on some of the questions that I had. So I'm not going to ask my question. That's perfect. I am going to go to Miss Oulette, who had her hand up previously, and I'm just going to scan here. Councillors look happy. So Miss Oulette, the floor is yours. We have a motion made, so we're good that way. So go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Crane. I just wanted to clarify for Councillor Hamilton that the reserve price in the bidding process is done through an appraisal, or what we think, with John's advice as well, what that list price would be, and then anything over and above that through the bidding process is great. So that's how that's established.
I should comment too, I'm not allowed to do an appraisal. That has been taken away from, I can give you my opinion as to land, as to value, but an actual formal appraisal must be done by somebody who's part of the appraisal industry. So.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, Council, let me just scan here. Looking good. We have the motion, option 2. Councillor Wilkie, I believe you made it, didn't you? Yep. All right. Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Excellent. Thank you. That's carried. Thank you, Mr. Fraser, for attending tonight. Appreciate you taking some time and hanging out with council here in Turner Valley.
You're welcome.
And thank you, Michelle and Richard, for signing on as well. Moving on to 15.3, notice of motion by Councillor Gordon.
Gordon? Just a point of procedure here. I need to recuse myself as this deals with businesses paying business licenses. It's a bit of a gray area, but in a gray area, I'm always going to recuse. So if somebody can just shoot me a text, I'll exit the meeting. If somebody can shoot me a text when you're done, I'll log back.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
Councillor Gordon, the floor is yours.
Yeah, we looked at that notice of motion a couple weeks ago, so I'm not going to repeat it. But really, I appreciate the work administration has done bringing back option 1. And that is the motion that I would like to make forward is indeed option 1 regarding the business licenses for our self-contained businesses that do not host any outside visitors, so to speak. They don't solicit or permit entrance to customers here within the town limits. And this is something that has come up in discussion with other councillors, but also within our IEDC about how do we handle those. Usually they're identified as home-based businesses, but in both of our towns, there's a couple of businesses that have that rent out or lease spaces, but they don't entertain visitors. They're just using that space because perhaps at home they don't have an office or whatever it may be. And I know, especially with our home-based businesses, there has been concern because of the license fee that is applied to them, that they're very reluctant to submit a license request or a license application. And for me, looking ahead long term and looking down the road, investors and developers, when they come in, they want to know what kind of a support we have. Is there similar types of businesses? Who could support them? Who could help them? And without having these small home-based businesses registered, we don't have that data. So I would like to see us eliminate $150 annual license fee for these small single-based businesses that don't entertain customers, so that we can have the business ID number on hand, so that developers long-term can identify what our skilled labor is, what other complementary or supplementary businesses are in the area. And I think it's a good way for us to continue the momentum we have regarding being open for business, eliminating red tape, and seeing how we can attract investment long term. So that's why I make option number 1.
Thank you. Ms. Thompson, you have comments?
I just would like to comment that administration hasn't made a recommendation here. This option 1 is directly your recommendation flowing from your notice of motion.
From the motion? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you wrote it up well. No, you summarized exactly what I want to see here. Maybe we can make a simple addition that in place of a business license, the encouragement here is to get that business ID number so that we can identify what small businesses are here in the community, which home-based businesses we have. It's so important. When you Google and do a research on regional Alberta, our dashboard where we get that data, they use that, Nick can help me, the NCAS number, I think the name is, where it really is the registered number that identifies what type of business they may have. And with our small businesses, especially the home-based ones, being reluctant to submit an application for business license, it's been noted in our IEDC that we're kind of missing some crucial data. And one of the key things about being very careful with even looking ahead to amend our land use bylaw, how best can we support the community? How best can we support the business community? And I'm a big supporter of this, eliminating the business license for this specific type of business.
Okay, thank you. If council doesn't have comment first, I'm going to ask a question of Ms. LeBlanc, who's our EDA rep. What businesses would classify? Like, if it's pretty broad, right? So, obviously a business that doesn't solicit or permit entrance to customers within the town limits, but are generally run as a remote office with very minimal disturbance to adjacent property. Would this be something that we should be listing the criteria? How would administration see this working?
Well, without really having given it very much thought prior to this moment, what I've seen in the past is that any contractor business or any business where it requires essentially a phone, a computer, a desk that doesn't entertain any kind of customer coming in or out, does everything, via electronically or over the phone, and then takes the tools, leaves, and does work elsewhere outside of that particular premise, would likely be classified as such. So you'd have to go through and define that. I'm sure that there's other communities that have likely some pretty good descriptions of what would qualify as that type of business. And then Michelle may have to comment on this, but it would have to go through for a fee amendment or possibly a business license amendment as well, so that those would be altered. So there would be a clear definition outlining it, and it would be clear also to anybody who is involved in the processing as to what type of business qualifies.
Okay, thank you. With that being said, I will follow up and go to Ms. Hulette and ask her roughly the same question, with the caveat of what Ms. LeBlanc just said. Other communities may have already gone this route. Do you, in your professional capacity, know of anything similar that you could draw on for some information for us?
Mayor Crane, I don't really know other than an incentive for people to want to register their businesses within the town would be maybe like a directory that we do for businesses. If you want to kind of leverage that avenue, we charge the business licenses now because they're associated with a home occupation permit or an actual business. So if I have a home occupation, I get an annual business license. I can do my business within the town, offer my services. I'm registered. I have my advertising benefit or, being on that directory. So that allows us to follow up with, I don't know, if someone had a complaint from a home occupation business that they have, we can follow up on those items. I didn't really see the purpose of having the home-based business if it was truly a service that they're offering within the town or not. It was, are you working from home? What are you doing as your business? Do you have visitors? So it seems a bit undefined.
Okay, thank you. Council, any comments? Any questions? Any? Councillor Haldane.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting idea trying to capture. I think it's more businesses that might not be coming forward to advertise, I think is what Jonathan's intent is. Just so we kind of know they're there, and maybe ones that wouldn't have normally gone through the business license process. But I know that we're right in the middle of working on our land use, and we've had conversations about the categories and major and minor. So I don't know if this falls better into that conversation or not. I'm just kind of at a loss as to process going forward because we're in the middle of that one.
Okay, Ms. Select, would you like to comment on that? Is there an overlap there, as Councillor Haldane said, with the major minor as we go through land use bylaw? Is there an effect on land use bylaw here that we could team something together?
Mayor Crane, we don't want to make this complicated. We have a fee schedule. Business licenses are part of that fee schedule. We issue a business license for someone who has a home occupation. They generally have a home occupation permit for major or minor. And that's really where the story ends for us. We're not really collecting statistics. It's sort of like a stats can or a provincial, regional, like who's collecting that statistic on who's who in the zoo working from their home-based business. If they don't have a home occupation permit and they don't have a business license, I don't know about them. But I fail to see how I could incentivize someone to come forward to say, hey, I got a home occupation or a home business that I want to register with the town. I don't get anything in return necessarily, and I'm not paying a fee. I had a hard time understanding, we're sort of voluntarily asking for people to elect to tell us what they're doing in their home with their computer to do some business activity. And I'm not sure if we're not enforcing something by having a development permit for a home occupation. I don't really run around enforcing business license, if you will. So it's totally outside the bailiwick of land use planning in my mind, this motion.
All right, that's what I wanted to know. If it's something that doesn't belong, then that's what we want to know. Good. I've got Councillor Hamilton, then Councillor Waring.
So how about if we keep the business license, you still need to have a business license, you still need to have a home occupation permit, but if your business does not solicit customers, the fee for the business license is reduced to $0. Like, how about we do that? We keep the process the same, the requirement the same for a permit for home occupation and license the same, but if you are not soliciting customers, the fee is $0. Because what I think what Jonathan Gordon is trying to accomplish is to get businesses that aren't going through the license process because they don't want to pay the $150 because they aren't really having people come to them. They're using their home to run an accounting business, or maybe they're IT, or I'm not sure. There's a million options on what that could be, but they're not filing for a business license because they don't want to pay the fee. Therefore, our community doesn't know they exist because they're not registered. So I think if I'm understanding that all correctly, maybe it would be easiest if we just removed the fee. You still need to have a license, but the fee would be zero for businesses that don't have that don't solicit customers.
I'm going to go to Ms. Thompson for reply, and then I have Councillor Waring.
I have a bit of a concern about that because if these individuals, even though they don't solicit business into their home, and the example of you're running an accounting or bookkeeping out of your home or some other type of business that residents, that's actually soliciting business. In my mind, you're a bookkeeper and
accounting, yeah.
So some clarification on this would be, because how is it fair to somebody that's actually gone through the process, got their minor, major home off, and pays their business license on a regular basis. However, these individuals that haven't done that, but they still are running a business at home, but because they don't want to pay the $150, how does that make it fair? And I'm just only asking this question because I'm not quite understanding the direction that the board is moving in here.
All right, thank you. We'll go to Councillor Waring, and then we'll circle back.
Well, one of the things that came up quite strongly when we were looking at businesses within Turner Valley and Black Diamond from the point of view of economic development and how we can advertise to the outside world what facilities, businesses and services are available within the two towns, is that there are a lot of businesses available that nobody knows anything at all about, because they are these grey businesses working from home, no business license. Nobody really knows what they're doing or is aware of how to contact them. Now, I can't believe that they're all doing this because they don't want to pay $150. But how do we get to advertise the fact that these businesses and services are available? And do we really want to? Well, from an economic development point of view, yes, we do. But we're not sort of trying to be the hard police forcing people to buy a license just so people are aware they're here. It's a really difficult place to be at. I fully support the fact that they should buy a license, end of story, and register. And at the same time, I'm sympathetic. Like myself, I've been in business for 15 years here, and I haven't got a business license. Fortunately, I've retired now, so I can get away with it. But I mean, the people who are consultants working from home, I'm sure a lot of them don't have any sort of business license at all. So I can see where Jonathan's coming from. I feel the pain from the point of view of economic development. But I just wonder at the end of the day whether it's going to make any difference or not.
I'd have a follow-up to that, and then I'll go to Councillor Gordon. Is this not something that IEDC would be looking at as a business directory? Obviously, I think the whole intent here is to incentivize the businesses that don't register, obviously, to register so we can know and we can help promote them. But then it falls into the minor, major conflict and so on. So I'll go over to Councillor Gordon, but I think maybe IEDC has some foot in this game. Councillor Gordon?
Yeah, I think Councillor Hamilton summed up my thoughts exactly. It's to, and then following up with what you said, Mayor Crane, it is very much a perspective of what's in the community. There is, now I don't know the number, but there are those who honestly work in town. They work remotely. We now have fiber optics. There's more people coming with the opportunities to work remotely. And we need to know from an economic development perspective, who's providing what in town. Is it $150 that's keeping them from doing it? Or is it the process? Or is it the fear of being policed? You know, I don't have the answer to that question, but there is a definitive need for those local businesses who are operating under the radar for us to know what they are from a development perspective. Skilled labor, what options do they have? I mean, it's been, as John mentioned, it's been discussed at the IEDC level that we would love to know who's operating in town and what they're providing. Michelle brought forward a business directory. Monique can speak to it. We've been discussing this back and forth with the IEDC as we're finalizing our marketing plan. What form of a business directory do we produce? Is it one that is solely on business license? The problem with that is, if you look at our business license register right now, it includes multiple companies who are not located in town. They have a business license to work in town, but they're not located in town. And so this is to really encourage those businesses located in town to come forward, to let us know what they're doing. We're going to waive the fee based on certain criteria. They're those that do not entertain clients. They're those that do not permit entrance into their home, and that would be noted on the application fee. We get that business ID number. We know exactly what businesses are here so that we can encourage the local business community about what's here in the business community. As John mentioned, that has been stressed over and over again at the IDC level. The members at large, leading business people, aren't even sure of what's located in town in both of our communities. And so this was just one thought to see if we can somehow mitigate and fill that gap a little bit.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Holiday.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. I think that there's to differentiate between what type of business they are and, you know, those who have customers, and what if they have somebody come once, or, you know, they say it's not that often, and then the businesses who are paying get their nose out of joint. Like, I think there's things that we can do to be creative. You know, the town of Brooks got rid of business licenses entirely, unless if you lived in town. If you were a resident, if you were a business from outside coming in wanting to work in the town, you still had to pay a business license. You know, Carstairs waived theirs for 2021. There's things that we could do to maybe encourage people to sign up, and then start with IEDC with some good marketing and get them hooked on the value that we provide. So that they'll want to continue should we put, you know, the next year if we put fees back in. I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence on this. I think that there's things we can do, but I think it needs to be even across all of our residents and all of our businesses.
All right. Ms. Thompson, you'd like to comment?
So could I suggest, Councillor Gordon, that maybe you move forward with allowing staff to come back with some recommendations versus option one?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Heather. I was actually thinking of withdrawing my motion and providing that alternate direction that Councillor Holiday spoke to. If council would be willing, we would direct administration to come back with different alternatives to the removal of red tape and business attraction regarding this.
Maybe add the word registration in there as well. I'm thinking, because one of the initiatives that you're looking for here is to incentivize them to register so that we know what we have. So I think that word
exactly
would be good if you
business license and or registration.
And then
does that work, Mayor Crane? Business license and or registration?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. No, listen, I appreciate the discussion around the table. It's really good.
You bet. Councillor Rapp.
Yeah, I sat here and listened quite a bit for the pros and cons of why we should and why we shouldn't. $150 if you're running a business doesn't sound that prohibitive, but I kind of like Councillor Holiday's idea, pardon me, and that is to just maybe not have any business license at all. IEDC is interested in getting a registry of who the businesses are. So maybe you have a registry instead of a business license or something like that, because, you know, so I think this needs more work. I'm not really in favor of anything except to refer to administration, see if we can come up with a better plan. We also have the land use committee, which is still working on the land use bylaws. So I think it ties into that. So I think we need more work personally before I could support anything other than to say let's refer to administration, come up with a better plan, and look at some other alternatives, as Councillor Holiday already has.
Okay, that sounds good. Monique, I see your hand went up, and then I have Councillor Hamilton, and then I have Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor Crane. I was just going to mention that it would be an ideal discussion for IEDC, because on there are also representatives from the town of Black Diamond, which we share business licenses with. So it becomes a little bit more layered and complex when we consider that. Of course, there are certain criteria that is outlined clearly as to where a business must register its license or its business, but nevertheless, it does get a little complicated. And if we're working together, it should be something that's decided together. So just a suggestion to bring it forward to one of the next IEDC meetings for further discussion and then potentially recommendations back to council.
Could that all be an amendment to the, or in addition to the motion, Councillor Gordon?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent, thank you. And we will go to Councillor Hamilton. He is good. And if we are all good, I'm going to call a vote, and then someone's going to check Deputy Mayor Wilkie.
Can we get a read?
Yeah, we're going to get a read back on the motion. Are you going to read it back? Okay. Miss Bridget is going to read back the motion.
That council agreed to direct administration to come back to council with recommendations regarding red tape reduction surrounding business licensing and registration. And or registration.
I think that you would take council out of there now. I would say that it goes to an IEDC meeting for further discussion.
Before it comes back.
Before it comes back.
Really, it's going to go to IEDC, then it's going to come back as a recommendation through IEDC committee on what is the best option to both councils. Just going to reword that to make sure that it's going the proper route of IEDC, then via councils, and then we will have it read back again.
That council agreed to direct administration to make recommendations to the IEDC regarding red tape reduction surrounding business licensing and or registration before bringing the matter back to council.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good.
Don't we want to discuss it with IEDC, not make recommendations to IEDC?
To discuss at IEDC. So let's add that discussed in there, and then we should be good.
Is there a timeline you want attached to that?
IEDC meets once a month.
The next IEDC meeting, Monique, are you comfortable with that?
Agenda item. Under agenda item.
Do you have a date for that meeting handy, Monique?
I do. It's March 11th. So if we could present to council in April. Would work.
So March 11th IEDC meeting.
Okay, last run, here we go.
That council agreed to direct administration to discuss red tape reduction surrounding business licensing and or registration at the March 11, 2021 IEDC meeting before returning to council in April.
Leave it open.
April.
Yeah.
April. You don't even need to put the April in, because if the discussion needs more,
Right.
then
Before returning to
IEDC
council,
would,
okay.
would vet that out. So,
Okay, before returning.
before returning to council. Yep, okay. All right. Mr. Gordon?
No, that's perfect. That works. Thank you.
Okay. All in favor? Excellent, thank you. Can someone text Councillor Wilkie and tell him to hop back on, please? And that concludes old business, so thank you for that. We have Turner Valley Subsidized Transportation Program, 16.1. Oh, Wilkie will be as quick as lightning. He's already here, we just can't see him. Oh, I laugh at my own jokes all the time. I mean, I'm married. What else do you do, right? Like, really? Let me see. I suppose I should ask, who has texted Wilkie? Because I didn't. Did anybody? Gordon did. Okay, and Cindy, good. Yes.
John, could you maybe hide your video so that Mayor Crane can see all the faces that would be really great. You can still listen in, I'm sure, but it gets complicated for Mayor Crane to see all the faces on the video when he's asking for a show of hands, et cetera.
Yeah, that's okay. You know what? We're good. We're good. Okay, moving on. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilkie. We just passed a motion for an extra $1 million to go to capital budgets just for Parks and Rec, made by Councillor Waring, because he said he needs the money. And sorry, you were out of that vote, but very greatly.
Fantastic. Money just summoned from the depths. I like it.
Yeah, it was a bigly vote, really bigly vote.
Yeah, it's all coming from business tax.
Yeah.
Would you like Bridget to read the motion? Carrie?
Yeah, sure. Councillor Wilkie, we'll have Bridget read the motion for you so you're up to speed.
It's all right. I was listening on YouTube, so it's all good.
Oh, you're good then. Okay, excellent. Moving on. Turner Valley Subsidized Transportation Program 16.1, Ms. LeBlanc. Heather, if that's fine. Okay, go ahead, Ms. LeBlanc.
Thank you, Mayor Crane and Council. I appreciate an opportunity this evening to put forward some information regarding a Turner Valley Subsidized Transportation Program. You may remember this evolved from some budget discussions as well as through the FCSS, whereby it was identified that there may be a need for a transportation subsidy, what used to be called the taxi subsidy, that would serve Turner Valley residents. We've had a program since 2014. It was a joint program with the Town of Black Diamond, FCSS, in which there was cost sharing, where for the majority of the time up until 2019, the cost share was 50-50 with some very specific criteria that was put around those trips. They were primarily medical in nature, but when we had a taxi locally, they were also for seniors, whereby it would allow them to make trips for cultural reasons, such as going to the library or being able to participate in recreation, or just really joining with others and going to the Valley Neighbors Club or even to the bank when it was located locally. It was administered through the Town of Black Diamond, for which we paid a service fee. And in that, there had been increasing amounts in the budget that were allocated. These are non-FCSS grant dollars, because the FCSS provincial grant cannot be used for transportation purposes. And it came directly out of budget, so taxpayer dollars. In 2019, we saw the beginning of a drop for a number of reasons, but then when 2020 hit, COVID really affected the ridership, as well as it forced the retirement of one of our local service providers. Therefore, we no longer had a service, and then gathering restrictions were such that we could not find one to operate locally, as it were. Approximately over the years, off and on, about 30 of our residents would use the service. Some of those were from the seniors lodging in Black Diamond. If they had any history of having lived in Turner Valley, then they would be allocated as such, and then we would be covering those subsidy fees. So in general, that $6,000 budget would more than cover the demand and the use. However, in 2020, of course, that dropped, and at the same time, there had been the transportation study of which Turner Valley did not participate in the end to assist with operational costs of the Black Diamond Sheep River shuttle. So Black Diamond FCSS proceeded without going forward with any kind of taxi subsidy program, instead using its own service. So I'll move on. That's sort of the background, in that there was really no opportunity for Turner Valley to be able to either use a local service or necessarily use the Sheep River shuttle, which I'll explain momentarily. In addition to that option, there was also there was a lot of research done with other communities to see what in fact they had in play. Okotoks does a combination of a taxi service subsidy along with a volunteer driver program. That program in itself is a fair amount of work for the town of Okotoks, and does require a large amount of resources, staff, and funding to be able to support it. I've also reached out to local organizations to be able to gauge the level of interest, and while they thought it was a great idea, and certainly inherently they were wanting to help, especially their members, and already had some form of a volunteer driver program on an as-need basis, they didn't want to formalize it because of the costs of insurance, and also the fact that they had very limited resources. And for several of these organizations, they're elderly folks who are typically driving their elderly friends, and that can present some issues from time to time as well. The Sheep River shuttle, in discussing it with Black Diamond FCSS, would be potentially available on a charter basis. So currently the service operates 2 days a week for Black Diamond residents only at a subsidized rate, offering any kind of trip. It really doesn't matter. It's not called a subsidized program. The Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, where it's not typically booked for Black Diamond residents, it is offered up for charters for anyone. So it's essentially on demand. However, to be able to suit things such as medical appointments, remembering that our subsidized program has the criteria that it would be for medical appointments only. And the other criteria is that while we have tried to set an income level for income challenged people, seniors, or those with permanent disabilities, often even that can be out of reach for anybody who's already at that low threshold. So there is a little wiggle room in terms of the criteria, but typically that would be what we would be looking at. And at the moment, the flexibility is limited. So depending on when these appointments are, if they're out of town, of course, it would be Okotoks, High River, or Calgary, then there's no guarantee that the shuttle would be available for those times. Now, that's not to say that it wouldn't. It's always a possibility, but we've not been able to nail that down to be able to include the flexibility that is really needed. So in looking at this for 2021, I reached out to the regional FCSSs that do have programs to find out who they used, how they went about the process, what kind of criteria is set. And it really seems like we could probably manage a hybrid of the Okotoks system, whereby they have a local taxi driver whom I've spoken with, who's willing to essentially come to Turner Valley for the same rates as were provided in the 2019 local taxi service rates, which is really quite incredible. It makes it at least fairly on par to what it was before, and would allow for a little bit of wiggle room. In other words, there would be no surcharge to come to Turner Valley to be able to do those trips. And it would be worth that business's while because they would be driving out of town. There would be no local types of trips that would be permitted. They would be at least at minimum to Okotoks, but likely High River or Calgary, and 3 different destinations in Calgary would be rated. So while at the moment the demand is low, and that's specifically because of COVID, we think, and also what has happened is that people have learned to really rely on friends and family because we haven't had a service here. But we are getting calls and inquiries for those people who, it's not just an income challenge, it's really that they have no other means of transportation. They live here and they just simply cannot get to Okotoks. They don't have that family and friend network that so many of us are blessed to have. And as a result, they're unable to make it to those medical appointments, or they have to find other means, which typically they're just not booking, is what I'm hearing, or they're not able to get to them. So the idea here would be that there would be a contract drawn up between a taxi service and the town FCSS, whereby the criteria would be laid out. There would be a pass system. It would be a paid ride for the amount that would be subsidized by the resident, and then the balance would be paid by the town, which would be invoiced on a monthly basis. That's basically the premise of it. The other side of it would be that options would be kept open so that as the Sheep River Shuttle, which is fully handicapped accessible, opened up, then potentially we would be able to work again with Black Diamond to be able to use that service and provide that as a subsidized service for our local residents. So moving along, what I'm looking for from council is really approval to develop and implement a subsidized transportation program, which would be funded through the already allocated 2021 Community Access Program that's been allocated, approved by council through the budget process, and to offer this. And I say that because while we had intentions of doing that during the budget, we were really not sure what the options would be, and I felt that it was important for council to be aware of this and to hopefully move forward with a motion to support the direction that administration is providing today. I open it up to questions.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Hamilton first.
I'll just give you a motion that council direct administration to develop and implement a subsidized transportation program funded using the 2021 Community Access Program budget allocation and in the amount not to exceed $6,000. Like Minik has already said, the program's not seeing a lot of ridership in the last year, but maybe that will change. And it is good to have something set up in the event that people are requiring or showing a need for it. It's also important to note that the majority of the youth, and Minik did note this, but I just want to highlight it, the majority of these appointments or when this is utilized is by appointment. So there's not a lot of flexibility on the user, and specific days and times are required. So not being able to, and the reason that I bring this up is looking to our neighbors, it wouldn't really work to run this type of program with the Sheep River Shuttle, because we'd already know that Tuesdays and Thursdays would be out of the realm of possibility. So I am speaking in favor of the motion as presented by.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Gordon and Councillor Wilkie.
Yeah, I appreciate the initiative here, Minik, and helping those who need this subsidized program, but also a support program in that. I find it unique that there was the year before, what was it, 2019, there was on average 30 individuals who needed this. So I'm just, see, that's a fairly low number that we can support, and I do support this motion as well. The question I have for administration is there was last year, the local taxi service started up and then shut down within the last 3 months as well. Monique, do you have any information on that individual? Are you aware of that individual?
I am, and to my knowledge, I don't know the reason for it other than it was not an active service that I considered because they were not providing that service at the time that I did the investigation. Now, obviously, if we had a local provider, then there would be an opportunity to be able to use them.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you. Follow up, Councillor Gordon, or was that good? Good. Okay, Councillor Wilkie.
Yeah, my question was along the lines of Councillor Gordon's, I guess. Just so I understand correctly, any agreement that we entered into here isn't necessarily an exclusive agreement. If there was to be a local provider that became available, we could use that we could take advantage of that local provider as well. Then,
if I may, through the mayor, I would suggest that, in dealing in good faith, that there would have to be some amount of time where it was exclusive. And I would run it as a pilot project just to see how that was working, because this is something quite new in terms of bringing an outside agency to be able to provide the service. And then from there, we'd likely have to go to an RFP if we wanted to, find supplier that was exclusively providing that service. But what we have done in the past when we're sharing the service with Black Diamond is had several service providers and drew up contracts. So really it was the preference of the resident, and they often did have a preference as to which service they wish to use, because for a couple of years there were 2, and in 1 year I think there were 3 services that were available.
absolutely. I just wanted to make sure we weren't potentially disincentivizing any future service provider locally, because I would love to see some service in the area again, and I hope that comes back as restrictions ease. So thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Seeing no further comments, I think this is great to have an option for residents. As COVID restrictions lighten, maybe it's going to be a bus to go get some vaccines. You never know. But we have to have options, and this definitely fills that void, and it covers our local needs, as well as looks to the future. If we have local suppliers, they would obviously fall into that envelope. So I think this is great. Seeing no desire to comment, I'm going to call the question. All in favor of Councillor Hamilton's motion? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you. And we are moving on to general correspondence 17.1, Westlock County concerns regarding proposed changes to the AER Directive 1067. So it's a very nicely detailed letter, basically wanting the communities and municipalities that are getting underfunded by some of these companies on well sites that basically aren't running any money through their organization. It's just a name and a title that leaves the municipalities holding the bill. They have to recover those losses through taxation of residents. It's a good detailed letter with over 80 rural municipalities seeking to ensure that the AER and the province of Alberta act to protect municipal taxation and security powers relating to insolvent license holders or those continuing operations under bankruptcy protection. So definitely can feel the pain there for other municipalities that were depending on some of those funds. I don't think there's an action required here.
No, there is no request.
It's just accept for information, and I thank Westlock for having that sent out, and the Alberta Energy Regulators doing what they can, I guess. isn't a lot, but they can't really do much with a bankrupt company. Although it's 3 recommendations, and I like them. Section 5, maintaining eligibility. Section 4.5, unreasonable risk, obtaining general license eligibility. And Section 4.5, unreasonable risk, obtaining general license eligibility. Again, under another caveat, but it's all there in writing. It's a good one to read. Councillor Rapp?
Yeah, I'll give you a motion to receive that for information purposes, and it is a real issue for many municipalities that have derelict wells and unpaid dues from the oil companies, but it doesn't affect us, I don't believe.
Thank you. The only way to make me stop talking sometimes is to make a motion, and you did that very effectively there, Councillor Rapp. All in favor, except for information? Excellent, thank you. 17.2, Minister of Municipal Affairs, from the Honorable Rick McIver. Nice, simple letter stating he acknowledges our amalgamation process, and that the ICFs, or Intermunicipal Collaboration Framework, has an extension to April 1st, 2022. So between Black Diamond, Turner Valley, and the county, we don't have to put in extra work on that while we work on it. I'll get a motion for that. Yes, ma'am.
Actually, we will still have to work on the county, but depending on the direction we go with the amalgamation, might not be separate. If we amalgamate, then it'll just be the one town.
Because I did notice in correspondence as well that the MD was given the exact same letter to the Reeve Susanna. So she was included in this exact same piece of correspondence. Okay, so there you go. I'm looking for that motion, and I have it from Councillor Hamilton here in-house. Except for information, all in favor? Thank you very much. That is passed. Correspondence. Where is my second page, Kevin? There it is. Committee board minutes. Chief River Intermunicipal Library. I will give you the motion to accept the October, December, and January minutes as presented. Any comments? Councillor Wary?
Libraries can open up after today. It was announced by our leader that libraries can open to, I think it's 15% of the normal loading people.
Well, there you go. I guess Thursday's board meeting will be an exciting one. Excellent. All right. That's good news. I didn't know that one. I just heard, all I heard was the negative part, that sports were put on hold still. So, okay. All in favor of accepting the minutes?
Motion by
Me. Thank you. We have Sheep River Regional Utility Corporation, Hamilton, Rab, and Waring. I'm looking, I see Rab gave me his poker sign, so that's an acceptance for a motion.
I'll give you the motion.
Rab, could you speak to it?
It does include our budget, and I was actually in attendance at this one, so I could speak to it, but I'd have to go back and find my agenda notes. We did pass our budget at that time as well. So that was a major highlight, I think. Organizational meeting and also our budget was included in these minutes.
Excellent. All right. Thank you. Any questions from council? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Pass Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, Wilkie and Holiday. I got Wilkie.
So I can give you a motion to accept the minutes in the package for information. These are older minutes, and pretty straightforward, nothing major out of these ones. But we had a meeting last week as well, and I do have a motion that requires attention from that as well. So let's deal with, I guess, accepting these minutes first, and then we can move on to that one.
Okay, sounds good. Accept these as information, all in favor? And then we had an update from the PRAC that Wilkie was going to speak to tonight that we didn't put there, but you're going to talk to it now.
Yeah, the minutes. There's always a lag on minutes, which is fine. We had a meeting on last Monday, just kind of an update meeting. A couple of things worth noting that came out of that meeting. The first one, I guess, that I'd speak to, and it was on our agenda last week, but just there's a Friends of the Sheep River Park Society that's kind of getting off the ground. Early days. It's been registered. I don't know that it's been accepted by the province as a society yet, but that is underway. The idea there being to sort of help mobilize some volunteer efforts and hopefully access some additional outside funding sources that might not be available for Parks Pathway recreation activities within the greater Turner Valley Black Diamond area. So one of the things I really like about this, it is a board made up of members from both communities, Turner Valley and Black Diamond, and we'll have a focus on the broader area. So that was exciting. Then there was a couple of motions. The first one regarding the Friendship Trail, just there was a recommendation that council from PRAC that council view the Friendship Trail as a ongoing element of municipal asset management and not a PRAC initiative, which I think is in line with some of the discussion that we've had at council previously on that. Just something that I brought to PRAC as a question. So no action really required there, I don't think. There is no item funded right now along those lines anyway. The second was dealing with PRAC and related initiatives for 2021. There is the $100,000 in the budget for 2021 initiatives. We had made recommendations in 2020, PRAC had, to focus on Arrowhead Park, getting that off the ground, and then the second initiative that we'd identified was a trail from sort of Robert Street down to the river, providing some additional river access. Since then, obviously, there's been the issues with the golf course road and the transfer and not having connectivity there. So we just wanted, as a committee, to revisit that priorities and make recommendations to council. Craig is sort of, there's funding in the budget, but he doesn't really have marching orders, and we're getting into that time of the year where he needs to have those. So after some discussion, PRAC's view, and there was a motion made that that we prioritize as a first priority getting a trail around the golf course to a minimum of kind of a mulched trail standard, just to provide that connectivity, especially heading into the golfing season here. And that the secondary priority be focusing on providing access to and cleanup of Arrowhead Park. The amount of work that we'll be able to complete is obviously going to depend a bit on cost estimates, and Craig can work that up. So I had a motion coming out of that. I just wanted to make a motion that council direct administration to proceed with 2021 Parks capital spending priorities in alignment with PRAC recommendations, focusing on, number one, completion of trail connectivity around the golf course to the minimum standard of a mulch-based surface as a first priority. And number two, access to and cleanup of Arrowhead Park as a secondary priority. And further that, upon completion of more detailed cost estimates, that administration revisit these projects with council for any further guidance or additional priorities. I don't think we know exactly what that money will get us. So if there's some left over for some strange reason, we'd revisit what other priorities there might be. So that's a motion on the table. If there's any questions, happy to take those. Cindy, I don't know if you had anything to add coming out of that conversation either.
No, it ties into our earlier conversation of 100 versus 200. That golf course, super important, and that all happened after the initial decisions were made last year on the other trail. So that's why the change. So no, you summed up good.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Councillor Byrne.
There is already a motion passed by Council direction administration to get this trail installed before May the 1st of 2021. It's an existing motion.
Made when?
I made it about a year ago when it was obvious that the golf course was going to close the access. And the direction was to negotiate an agreement with the golf course in order to install the pathway. The ex-CAO and myself and JD, and I think Richard, we walked the trail, showed them the route that we wanted to use. We're still waiting for the board of the golf course to agree to this being done. There's no agreement for the trail to be installed yet. And I understand that's not going to happen until the golf course has legally the documents for the land swap in place, which has not happened yet. So, I mean, by PRAC making this a priority, thank you very much, I agree, but it's basically duplication.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hall, do you want to clarify?
So I guess that sounds like it doesn't come out of PRAC's budget if Councillor Waring already did it. So just kidding.
Actually, it doesn't, because the estimated cost to put that path in was about $10,000. And Todd told me we can find that money from somewhere.
Okay, Craig wasn't sure on that. And I just want to make mention about the title. We learned at the PRAC meeting that there was an issue with the application, so it got stalled at land titles. Just a clerical error, and they're hoping to get that tidied up real quick. So it should be transferring fairly shortly.
Remember that the golf board doesn't meet only monthly. So once they got the documentation, it's going to be, I would think, the earliest April or May before they even discuss it.
Amazing. In the age of email, only meet once a month. Wow.
Well, in land titles, I don't think they have emails. So
no, they don't even.
You want to hear the old motion?
No. Sorry, I got to go to Heather first.
I'd have to look back, Councillor Waring, but I believe the motion was to direct administration to work with the Turner Valley Golf Course and prepare a route. I don't think that there was any direction regarding a route with minimum mulch. And I do believe that that was done with the golf course. So walked the route, and so I guess that needs to be firmed up with the golf course, and of course Mr. Beaton will be coming back with costs.
Yeah, the direction was to get an agreement with the golf course so that the path could be installed prior to the start of the golf season, which we made the 1st of May. The meetings with the golf course and looking at the route have gone on, but nothing has yet gone to the board of the golf course. Part of that was also that we had a winter path through the golf course, and we all know what happened to that. So enough said.
It falls into the realm of expectation. Expectations are future disappointments planned out in advance. Seems that you've done that. Okay. I like the recommendation, however, coming from PRAC to prioritize, because really it's about the big picture in the long game. And this is a perfect example of how something can get stalled. So Councillor Wilkie's motion, recommendation coming from PRAC is very valid. Prioritizes 3 specific things, and we can then take our fingers out of the pudding and let administration do the grunt work. So, no further comments. All in favor of the motion? And that is carried. And with that, I bid you good day, sir and ma'am. Have a good night. Take care. We are adjourned.
Good night, all.
Fraser, opinion.
Thanks,
And,
everyone.
we look forward to selling some land.
Night.
Take care. All right, good night, guys. Thank you. That was a good meeting.